Hello, you're here to rock out motherhood. This is day 3 of the 365 PIF Talks series for the month of July through Life Coach University. Our one ask is that after your time here, you intentionally pay it forward with an act of kindness. Hi, I'm Lani Kim, and you're here to rock out motherhood with me. Today, I'll be sharing about adding value to your life by deleting and delegating. So, this is what I like to call adding by subtracting, which goes along with our theme of this week, which is making the cut. Right? When we think of cutting something, um, there's two things, right? When we cut something, and we're essentially left with at least two pieces, right? We'll say two pieces. And very often, right, when we think of cutting something, we are keeping something and throwing something out or putting it aside, putting it somewhere else, right? So that's what the theme of this week is to really focus on how we think about the things in our lives and where are places we can make cuts and what do we want to keep and focus on? And what do we want to set aside? And I say set aside because we're not necessarily throwing things out, right? I think of sometimes, when you cut a plant for a plant cutting, you might be setting aside that cutting so you can put it into the ground and grow it later, or give it away, right? So it's not a negative thing. It can be a very, very positive thing. And just like a plant cutting, you may actually give life to something else by making that cut. So really this week is to focus on, I would say, cleaning up our lives, really deciding what is it that gives us that rock star feeling? Where are we in our element, right? And what do we want to set aside? And maybe it's permanently, or maybe it's for a season, right? Um, so one of the things with today is that, again, adding by subtracting, right? And I want to focus on how you can do this without feeling that sense of obligation, mom guilt, um, the superwoman syndrome, right? Because very often we think that by deleting something, that means like it goes into this abyss and nothing is done with it and nothing's going to get done if we don't do it personally ourselves. But I want to invite you to think about deleting and delegating. Okay. So, um, deleting does call sometimes for something to kind of go into that abyss, right? But there's also delegating too, which takes something that we value, and sometimes it's actually something we greatly value, having whatever that is taken care of, but not per se by us directly one on one, 100% having a hands on experience with it. Okay. So the way to think about this is if you had a child, right? If you're a mom here from Rocking Out Motherhood, which you don't have to be. I think that dads are completely welcome. And I think this just applies in our life in general. It's not like these are thoughts that I've had just because motherhood came up, right? I think we're all trying to struggle with a lot of these topics through our daily lives, whether you are not a parent, whether you're a parent, but your kids are out of the house, whether you have kids in the house, right? All stages of life, all kinds of people. Um, but I think of, you have a child and your child is sick, right? and you think, oh, I want to obviously address this, but how do I do that, right? Maybe you're not a health practitioner and this is not your expertise. What would you do? You would delegate that, right? You would delegate that to some healthcare professional, right? And it doesn't indicate any lack on your part. It's not saying you don't care. In fact, you care so greatly that you're delegating this task, right, to somebody who you trust with your child, something very precious to you, right? So I don't want delegating to have a negative connotation. I want you to look at it. I mean, it's a neutral statement, right? I delegated it. But we so often as moms, I think, have a negative connotation for it because we're trying to control everything we want to do, anything we want to have our hands in, all these different things, when sometimes the most caring thing, the best thing you could do is actually delegate, right? Um, so I want you to see delegating as, I mean, it's a neutral statement. It can also maybe have a negative connotation depending on why and how you're delegating something, but it can also have a really, really positive connotation. So that's really what I want to introduce to you, this concept, right? Of delegating and even deleting as positive. Because the way I think about deleting is like editing something, right? It can be a very, very positive thing. You're taking out words, you're taking out sentences, and sometimes you're taking out ideas, right? And the way I love to think about this concept is there's this game. I don't know if you guys like to play app games. I don't play a whole ton of them, but I love word ones. And shout out if you are a Wordle person. But they have this game where they give you these sentences, not too many, like less than a paragraph, and they ask you, and sometimes I think it's even a sentence, maybe it's just a sentence, and they ask you to delete what is not necessary. That still keeps the sentence with the same exact message. It's a really interesting app because again, it makes me think about, oh, deleting is not a terrible thing. It actually can be a fun thing, just like this game. And so deleting and delegating can have a very, very positive connotation, right? So I even think of deleting um, like if you were to give someone a list of tasks, right, to do, and maybe it's a really long list, and maybe time wise, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room for error, right? That could be a little stressful to someone, right? Um, but if you were able to look at that list and look at what really needs to be done, and maybe there's one or two tasks that don't need to be done, and you delete it, right? You've helped that other person out. It can have a positive connotation, right? So, how do you add value to your life and ultimately the lives of other people, right? Um, by deleting and delegating. So, really, really think about that, right? How can you, I would say, call it paring down, right? And you have things like professional organizers. And what do they come to your house to do? They help you to clean out. When we say organize, very often we mean not just moving things around, we often mean deleting things out, editing things out, right? And sometimes throwing things out, right? Or the way I think about it is when I'm cleaning out stuff and I have a whole lot of things that I don't need, I actually think about it not as deleting, but as delegating. So, um, in my life, I am part of this group and it's called Buy Nothing. And it's usually regional, very regional. In fact, in my small city, we have, I think, 3 of the groups. So people are not more than probably half a mile from me. And we can post things that we don't want anymore or need, and we can gift them to others. And other people can look at all the listings and just decide what they want. And they can just put a comment that they're interested. And you get to pick people who you want to gift it to. But I think of delegating it based on whatever your criteria are. Maybe they have a good story. Maybe they have a good reason. Maybe they're the first person who can come pick it up, whatever your reasoning is. And it's been such a joy to be part of that group, because when I delegate my stuff, it is going to someone who really wants it or needs it sometimes. And I think of so much in our lives when we're delegating, we get to do that for someone else, right? So when you have children old enough to have tasks to do, right? And this can start when they're really, really little, right? Even cleaning up, if you guys are at all a Barney fan, right? How's that song go? Clean up, right? Everybody, everybody. So you can um, have your toddler delegated to the task of cleaning up. And that doesn't mean, right, when we delegate something, that doesn't mean we're completely either hands off, right? That could mean we're still part of it, but the kind of ultimate responsibility is somewhere else, like mentally in our heads, who is responsible for taking care of that task, right? We can delegate it to someone else, right? And again, you can still be part of the experience, right? But ultimately, that responsibility is not yours, or at least not 100% yours. And so, um, why do we do this, right? Why do we delegate this task of cleaning up, right? Even though that song drives me nuts, I would play it, right? Why? Um, and yeah, we're talking about rocking out motherhood. I had many days of rocking out to Barney and his clean up song. But my point is, why do we do this, right? Is because we are delegating that task with a purpose of growing somebody else, right? That is our child or our children, right? Learning something for themselves, how to clean up. And so when you delegate something, remember that someone else is learning something too, right? And this can be very powerful in their own lives, like cleaning up. And so, again, I want you to think about deleting and delegating in a positive manner. How can this be positive? And remember, when you are willing to share the stage, right? We're talking about rocking out motherhood, right? We got to let someone else rock out with us and find their own groove, which is, I think, actually the theme of next week. So this can be a really positive experience for you and for someone else. And when you delegate and delete, you get to spend more time doing what you love to do. And that's really what rocking out motherhood is. And I don't obviously mean it from a a self-centered sense, right? Of just me. Right? I think so often when we think of the spotlight is on us, it's just me. No, right? And sometimes when you're on stage, there's multiple people and you can spotlight all of you, right? And sometimes the spotlight moves around and that's totally okay, right? So the other point I wanted to bring up is, I have a friend who loves to play the guitar, and he comes from this musical family. They're so amazing. Um, yeah, I mean, that's a rock out family. They all are musical. They all love to play together for fun. And sometimes they actually play gigs together. And I think that is so neat. But it's not because they're each one man band, right? Someone's on the drums, someone's singing, someone's playing the guitar, someone's playing the keyboard, right? They have all been delegated a specific um, task, role, character, whatever, however you want to think about it. But going back to him, so he loves to play the guitar. He's very gifted. His children play, but um, but he can also sing, but it's not his favorite thing to do. And he delegates that responsibility. And so, in fact, one time he was asked to sing, and it wasn't particularly, again, something he wanted to do. So he delegated that task to his sister. And it was so neat for the rest of us to see them play together, because actually, that's the first time we got to see them play together. He's an adult. His sister actually lives not too far away, but not in our social circle. And it was a chance for all of us to meet her. And she kind of got to shine with him. And again, that's because he was so generous with delegating, right? And he wasn't afraid to say no, which goes back to yesterday, right? That no's can be very powerful and very positive. Um, and so the way I want you to think about this is um, think of your day, right? Maybe even your week or maybe your month, however you like to plan things out. And think of it like a pie chart, right? This is a pie chart, a round pie chart, and you section it off. I think of a day usually because that's just how I plan how I plan. It's usually daily. I do weekly and monthly, obviously, but I really focus on the daily. And so when you are dividing that pie, right, there is a capacity for your brain to take in all the different things that you do. And how much do you want to use at any given time? Oh, I just clicked off of, are you guys still there? Oh, you guys are still there. I just clicked something on accident. I think of that time too, right? In a day, we have 24 hours, and hopefully a good part of that you're sleeping. And then how do we want to delegate that time? So we have this pie chart. We get to decide how we divide it up and how much of that pie we give to each task, right? Or experience or relationship. And the more things you have, right? We think like, oh, if I can get these 15 things done, that says something about me. That is so awesome. I'm awesome. And we kind of get this high of how many things, how many, right? But I want to ask you not how many, but how well. What was the quality? So many times we want to do this quantitative, right? Look at our day. How many tasks did I do today? When really, I'm going to invite you to think about qualitative. And when we are looking for qualitative, right, we want to count the quality over the quantity. Because in the long run, that's really what you want your life to be about, right? You want to know you gave good quality. And I think about it like when you go to a really fancy restaurant, and if you're coming from another country, I'm assuming the culture might be very similar to here in the US, but there's always these ideas that a quality meal at a fancy restaurant is this plate with tiny bits of food. um, but it's super pretty and it's visually appealing, right? Why? And obviously, you're assuming that the food tastes amazing, right? Because we're going for quality, right? And why do we tend to think, or how do we think of these fancy events? It's usually in the context of celebrating something or something special about it, right? So think about that. You go to a fancy restaurant to celebrate something special that you want to bring a lot of attention to. You want the experience to have quality, but you don't go to a, 9.99 buffet, which probably not 9.99 these days, right? But a buffet, right? Your local cheap buffet with tons of food. No, you go to the fancy restaurant with the linen napkin and the wine glass, right? And the flowers in the middle and maybe candlelight, right? Um, and maybe the server wears a button-up shirt, right? Button-up collared shirt, and they're calling you, if you're a mom, right, ma'am. If you're a dad here, sir, right? Um, so, but it's these tiny, like not maybe not tiny, but moderately sized dish with much smaller portions, but it's visually appealing and it's special and it's high quality and it tastes really good, right? I want you to think about your time and even your mental energy and your physical energy too in this manner, right? Quality, not quantity. And remember, for everything you delegate, you give someone an opportunity to shine and be their own rock star, right? A rock star meal at a fancy restaurant, right, is quality. It's about quality. And so I want you to remember that pie chart. And whenever you go back and forth through different tasks, remember that there's something called a switching cost, which is the cost that it takes for you to step away from a task and then enter into a new task. That's why multitasking is somewhat of a myth. You don't really multitask because when you're multitasking, right, and you're not really focusing on something, inevitably the quality is going to be lacking or you're going to make some mistakes and have to go back. And so there's a cost to that multitasking. So if you're not even multitasking, but you're going from task to task to task, right? When you step out of that task and step into a new task, there's something called a switching cost that your brain must go through. And when you are going from task to task to task to task, you have a loss of impact of your day because so much of it is spent in these switching costs between these many, many tasks, right? So you're losing your impact, your stage presence, right? Because it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going from here to there, right? And you're flustered and you're not a lot of times very present, right? You wouldn't want to go to a rock concert and watch someone um, performing who's like, oh, am I Did I put on the right outfit today? Did I tie my shoes right? No, you want someone there ready to rock out. So remember, right, that it's not the quantity, it's the quality. And you can achieve that by deleting and delegating. So thank you so much for being here. I'm Lani Kim, and you just joined me for day 3 of the 365 PIF Talks series for the month of July, Rocking Out Motherhood. And I want to again invite you to pay it forward. After your time here, our one ask at Life Coach University is that you pay it forward. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.